Yes, everyone, it's that time of year again. It's springtime in northern France, and we're all set now to follow the remaining kilometres in the 113th edition of the race between Compiègne and Roubaix. I'm Phil Ligg, alongside me is Paul Sherwin. He'll take us through the map.
Well, that's where the riders started this morning, just lining up to head north towards the 27 sections of cobblestones that make this race so very famous. Gets very, very scary when you get to section number 18 to go, the Forest of Ironberg, built in Napoleonic times. Then through section 15, 14, they count down all the way towards the final section of cobblestones just outside of the velodrome. Mons-en-Pévèle is rated as a 5-star category of cobblestones. Very, very difficult indeed. And then towards the end, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, where very often the decision is made. There is a 9-man breakaway clear at the moment with just inside of 8 minutes advantage. They got clear after just 30 kilometres of racing.
As we pick up the live pictures now, we welcome our viewers from around the world, from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Asia, and indeed from NBC Sports in the United States. Welcome to you all. As you can see, it's a lovely day here, with 146 kilometres still to race. And the breakaway currently of 9 men. They got away about 30 kilometres in. I'm not doing anybody a disservice by saying I don't think any of these boys will stay clear to the finish, but they've certainly thrown the gauntlet down. All 9 at one stage gaining over 9.5 minutes. It's come back slightly now as we are now into the cobble sections of the race route.
Well, you can see the side of the road there, Phil. One or two riders, one or two of the helpers are there with their wheels now. This is one of those strange little discrepancies to the rules. There are helpers at the side of the road for these riders because very often at a stage like this, the team cars can be up to 4 or 5 minutes behind. So if a rider has a mechanical on a section of cobblestones, he'll ride through that section of cobblestones with his mechanical and hope to get repaired once he gets onto the smooth road afterwards.
Now the sectors do count down here. So sector 27 was the first sector of the day. Came at Troisville, the traditional entry into the Hell of the North. It's a sector of 2.2 kilometres. The breakaway entered that with a lead of 8 3/4 minutes. It's now down to 7 minutes and 49 seconds. Sky have been doing a lot of work back there, and they were leading the charge over Troisville as they went through that sector 27. The lead is now on sector 26, and the breakaway now looking a little bit fragile. We've just had a puncture to Pierre-Luc Perichon from Bretagne in the breakaway. I don't think he's got back yet, but he got a very fast wheel change. There are 9 riders there. I'll give you for posterity the 9 names. I don't think they'll be there at the finish. Greg Rast is one of the most experienced for Trek. Adam Blythe, the British rider who's now racing for Orica Greenedge, the Australian outfit. Alexis Guguer of AG2R. Sean Deby from Lotto. Alexis Saramotins of IAM Cycling. Pierre-Luc Perichon from Bretagne. Tim de Klerk from Top Sport Flandern. He's been with that team, by the way, ever since he turned pro in 2012. Frederica Backert of the Wanty team, and Ralph Matzke of the Bora Aragon team. And the gauntlet is down. A very fast day. They're picking up a tailwind here all the time. The leaders now have just entered sector 25. And the average speed over the first 2 hours, a massive 48 kilometres an hour. That's 30 miles an hour. And they are now only just seeing their time reversing. Now, Paul will tell you, coming towards the end, they should lose the benefit of this tailwind.
Well, it's a very complicated race route to Paris-Roubaix over the years. Going back to the 1980s, they actually had to search out sections of cobblestones, and that's why in the last part of the race, Phil, it zigzags around in the northern part of France. We have had very much of a prevailing tailwind in the first part of the course, which has pushed us up to these massive speeds of close to 48 kilometres an hour. But as we zigzag towards the end over the cobbles of Ironberg, over the Café de l'Arbre, the riders then start to pick up headwinds and crosswinds, which makes it much more difficult to ride in a straight line like this on the cobblestones.
Just sat at the back here in the Orica Greenedge colours of Australia is the British rider Adam Blythe. Delighted to be back in at the World Tour level, having had a year out with the NFTO team, in which he won the London Classic, the legendary race now down in London after the Olympic Games were held there in 2012. And if your picture's gone to black, don't worry over much, because ours has as well, but we might get a little bit of problems from the cobblestones. We're all back online now. 143 kilometres to go. Well, we haven't seen a rainy race. I think it's about 15 years since we had a real muddy Paris-Roubaix, Paul, but this is even so. This is very difficult on these cobbles, which are basically covered in sand and dust.
Yeah, many of these roads, Phil, they go back to Napoleonic times. In fact, to the cobbles of Ironberg, which the riders will hit at cobblestone section 18 to go, that was built in the time of Napoleon I. They are very rough and very often not used at all, but now, since around about the middle of the 1970s, the Amis du Paris-Roubaix started to put together a conservation group to conserve these cobblestones for the future and, of course, for this great race.
And it was a battle well won. Now these roads are protected for posterity. Not sure the riders are too happy about that decision, but even so, this is a race that every professional wants to win. That there is no doubt. And Sir Bradley Wiggins riding today's final race for Team Sky, having won the Tour de France. If he were to win today, he would become the first man to have done both events, win the Tour de France and Paris-Roubaix, since Bernard Hinault, which is a long time ago. The French would love to see a French winner of the Tour de France now.
Funnily enough, talking to Bradley Wiggins at the press conference just a couple of days ago, he said exactly that. Somebody asked him the question, who was the last Tour de France? He knew exactly who it was. He knew what jersey Bernard Hinault was wearing, because if you remember, Bernard Hinault, when he won Paris-Roubaix, was wearing the World Champions jersey. And I remember Bernard Hinault crashing in that event, and he was so motivated. It was as if he hit the ground and bounced straight back up again without even without losing any time at all.
A little bit of history being set today as well. The first participation of the African team, MTN Quebec, and also an African company now providing all the logistics dimension data for the event as well. So South Africa making its big appearance in the world of pro cycling today, for sure. This is on the sector at 26 kilometers. This is 26 sector rather. This is for the Peloton, going in here with a deficit of 7 minutes and 49 seconds.
Well, it is very obvious, Phil, that Team Sky are extremely motivated for this final big ride for them, for Bradley Wiggins, and what an ambassador he has been for the sport, whether it's been to Olympic Games or to the Tour de France. And if any man can pull this off today, announcing that he wants to win Paris-Roubaix, I would think it has to be Bradley Wiggins, because this man has known over his career how to motivate himself for specific goals. And today, he really wants to win that. And I was talking to Sean Yates just before we came on the air. Sean Yates, in fact, who was the team manager for Team Sky when Bradley Wiggins was the winner of the Tour de France. And he said that Bradley Wiggins is the kind of rider who is properly built for a race like Paris-Roubaix.
Well, if Sir Bradley sets his sights, he very often achieves those targets, but he has to have the mindset, and maybe today, because he wants this race, there's no question about that.
You have to pay attention in Paris-Roubaix, because you might have noticed we are looking at a beautiful day here in the north of France, but you might just have noticed, just going through the fields there, Phil, there is always a little bit of dampness in this part of the north of France. Well, there you go. That's why you have to pay attention.
Some are taking to the fields here. It's been a little shunt right in the middle there. Well, you can't see through the trees, unfortunately.
Well, it's just as I was mentioning. To see to the side of the road there, on the left and the right-hand side, it is a little bit damp, and all it takes is, let's not forget, the 4,500 riders rode many of these roads yesterday in the amateur version, of the randonnée version of this. And what happens is, because these are farm fields, a lot of dust and mud gets mixed together at the side of the road, and there you can see the little plaque of water there. It is quite treacherous.
Oh, this is a great shame.
Kurt
Stegman's here, obviously got a bicycle problem. Maybe he caused the crash, we wouldn't know. But in fact, running across those muddied fields there as well are going to clog up their cleats. And that's the next problem they'll get. Their feet won't lock back into those pedals.
Again, what I've always said about Paris-Roubaix, it's a kind of race where you've got the courage. Well, somebody is on the ground there from a Trek on the left-hand side of the road, and they are taking a long time to get themselves back up. They're looked after by the race doctor there. And you can see just how damp this is now. If you put a small fraction of mud across the top of these cobblestones, Phil, it's like trying to walk across an ice rink.
This is only the third sector of cobblestones here, where they've all had that first shunt, and that split the peloton. There's going to be a good deal of chasing here. Now, the wiseness of Sky there, they led into the first sector at 12-wheel. They've done it again here by riding at the front, staying safe for the moment.
Well, also another team which are very prominent at the front, they always are in Paris-Roubaix, is Ethics Quickstep. Whatever form they've been over the years, whether it's been Mapei, GB, MG, Magnificio, this team are always prominent in numbers towards the end of a race, which is why they're moving into these cobblestone sections in the front of the race, because towards the end of Paris-Roubaix, strength in numbers is so very, very important.
Well, the thing with Ethics is that by their own standards, they're not having a very good classic season. Yes, they've had 4 second places, if we count Stuyvar's second place as well. and no one else has finished in the top 10 of the classics this year, apart from Mark Cavendish, who opened up with the minor classic at Kuurne, Brussels at Kuurne. So we'll just see if they can pull off the goods today.
You can see the Australian national champion riding to the front of the main field as well there every now and again in the green and gold. There he is, Heinrich Haussler. I think coming back to the form that he had a couple of years ago, and this is the kind of race that a man like Heinrich Haussler could be extremely motivated for. But for the moment, it's a question of counting out the energy and the efforts that you do during the course of the day. Ian Stannard, not very far away from the front of the main field either. A great start to the season for him with his second victory in the Het Nieuwsblad. Again, I don't think anybody expected him to get that victory. He was outnumbered by Team Quickstep with guys like Tom Bowden in the group with him, and he came up with that victory.
Well, Sky announced before the season started they were turning their attention to the one-day classics, and they've had a very, very good opening to the classic season. And apart from Ian Stannard, of course, the first British cyclist ever to win the Grand Prix E3. Oh, there's another one gone down. That was Geraint Thomas who won the Grand Prix E3. But we've now got a crash. That's Ahlstrand of Sweden, I think, who hit the deck.
Well, it just goes to show, this rider here, Phil, he was trying to go to the left-hand side of the road, trying to find a little bit smooth part of the cobblestones, and he's obviously just clipped the front wheel and gone down very, very quickly indeed. That's why this is a race of patience and waiting and trying to ride in the middle. The roughest part of the cobblestones very often is in the middle, but that's the safest part to ride, riding on the crest of it, and it takes a lot of skill to be able to do that.
A little amusing tale that came from the ride yesterday, Paul, was one or two of the riders falling, and other riders seeing them go fall off. They stood up so quickly and looked around to see if there were any cameras, as they didn't want to admit they'd fallen off. But on this race, there's no shame in falling off. It can happen at any moment of the day.
Well, the time gap is slowly starting to tumble as well, Phil, because we got to a maximum of 9 minutes and 40 seconds for this breakaway group, which established after 30 kilometres of raining. But just the natural impetus behind. There's no organised chase going on in that main peloton behind, but it's just the natural speed as they accelerate to get into the cobblestone sections, which is eating into that advantage. And now it's come down quite sensibly to the 7-minute margin.
Sean Deby just swung off the front here. This is Frederik Backert. Everybody seems to be working quite well in this breakaway just now. Backert on the rear of the peloton now. Adam Blythe putting a lot of work in here, going back up towards the front. He's not going all the way down that line. The Giants of Flanders are looking on. And Sky now getting themselves well organised here. They brought the whole team up here. Wiggins is here as well. Stannard is up here. Geraint Thomas is here. These are the boys now going to look after. If they can put Bradley Wiggins into a good position in the last 20 kilometres, I think he'll be untouchable on the running. But there's an awful lot of work to be done first before we'll be talking about that. 7 minutes the gap is now.
Well, the important thing as well, I think, Phil, about Bradley Wiggins is he's got that little bit of track skill, and this is one of the rare races that actually finishes on a velodrome nowadays. It's not a very steep track, but because of the fact that Wiggins has got such a great pedigree on the track, he may well be able to use that to his advantage down towards the end. But you just need that extra little bit of wattage to try and get across this finishing line in first place. But first of all, he has to get through all of the dangers of the day before he can present himself onto the velodrome in Roubaix.
Sector 22 now at Verchamp. It's only 1.6 kilometres, it's about a mile long, and rated 3 stars. The hardest and most horrible stretches are rated 5 stars. As the breakaway still continues to lose a little bit of ground here. But the tailwind stays with them. The average speed stays high.
Well, it is just looking at this, Phil. We are about 47 kilometres now. That's because of the tailwind the riders have picked up on the early part of today's stage. Very, very rare do you get such incredibly beautiful blue skies like this for a Paris-Roubaix. Over the last few years, people have been dreaming, and many of the riders, specialists like Fabian Cancellara and Tom Bowden, dreaming of a wet Paris-Roubaix. Neither of those two riders here this year because of injury, and that's a little bit of a shame, but it makes the race, I think, a lot more open, with a lot more riders believing that they can actually win Paris-Roubaix today.
Well, the American sprinter Tyler Farrar is having a rear wheel wheel change at the back of the main pack at the moment, and he carries some of the hope, and that looks like Tyler Farrar right there. So he sat on the back of the main pack. He's waiting for a back wheel, in fact.
Looking over his shoulder. Now the important thing is to put your hand up and signal to the race referee that you've got a mechanical problem, and wait until the car is right up behind you, because if you stop, as I mentioned earlier, Phil, you could be waiting 2 or 3 minutes for the team car to come and change that tyre for you.
That's Alexis Saramotins of IAM on the far right. This is the breakaway again. There's a nice low angle shot from our very brave cameraman on the back of the motorbike. This is the Peloton in Salem.
It's one of the giants of Flanders you were talking about before. Many of the villages have those giants as part of their annual kermesse, the fairground which they have in the summer months, and they bring these giants around to the big competitions. But the concentration now, you can see on the riders at the front end of the main field, they're coming through to the feeding station. A little moment of respite before they start to hammer onto the cobblestones again shortly.
Matt Hayman's also in a spot of bother just now at the rear of the race. Now he's riding his 14th Paris-Roubaix, Matt Hayman, and he's now on the Orica Green Edge team. He was a regular with Sky, very solid man, but he feels that the big advantage could be his experience on this race, and Orica Green Edge are hoping for a high finish from him today. Holding now as we get into the feeding station here in Salem. Just sat at the back of the race there, caught a glimpse of him, was Sam Bewley as well, the New Zealand rider on Orica Green Edge. I think he's probably dropped to the rear to look out for Matt Hayman.
Well, again, after the feeding station is always a little bit of a dangerous moment, as we can see. There's the neutral service, if you like, at the side of the road. It's a big organisation by the teams, Phil, in a race like this, because you may well think that you could leapfrog ahead with a pair of wheels to look after the rides, but there are so many spectators, the roads are so narrow, you've got to have teams of five or six different teams with spare wheels to go and get to the end of these cobblestone sections to support your riders.
Well, Tinkoff Saxo, Tinkoff, the manager, has got rid of the former manager and owner of the team, Bjarne Riis, because of no results this year for Tinkoff Saxo. Maybe we'll see. Look at that. This is the Peloton going through at 31.5 miles an hour, 50 kilometers an hour. That, by the way, is the legal speed limit through here for the motor cars.
Oh, well, we're fine then. We're street legal at the moment. Once we get out of town, they can go in excess of 50 kilometers an hour. The average speed since the start has dropped down a fraction, Phil, since we went through the feeding station, down to 46.7 kilometers an hour, which is now starting to get to the 26-27 miles an hour average speed, but we could well see a new fast average speed for Paris-Roubaix. Let's not forget the record holder Peter Post back in 1964 at 45 kilometers an hour.
Oh, and there's a crash on the right hand, and Movistar's down. Again, a touch of wheels as they go around the corner there. Looks a little bit stunned as we get on to sector 21 now with the leaders. I think it was Adriano Malori. He's on good form at the moment, who went down there.
Excellent time trial. It was right towards the middle of the main field. Just a little bit of a slip going around that corner there, and quite smartly you're on the ground. These corners, they're so sharp here, and because of the fact that they're dry, there's a little bit of dust on them, and all of a sudden there you are on the ground. The other rider caught in that little accident at the back was Andrus Schillinger from the Bora Aragon team.
He did well, because the guy fell in front of him there, and he tried to avoid hitting him, locked up his bike.
You can now start to feel the little bit of organisation over on the left-hand side at BMC Racing in the red and black. On the right, the fluorescent yellow of Tinkoff Saxo. They're looking after Peter Sagan. They're all now, Phil, starting to get nervous, because very close now we're heading into the area of the Forest of Ironberg. It's such a decisive moment in the race for me. Well, there he is, the man we've been talking about all day.
Now, let's have a look at him. What do you think? He looks pretty cool to me at the moment.
Sir Bradley Wiggins, to give him his full title.
Absolutely, I'm surprised they haven't put it on. There we are. He's a bit down the pack at the moment. He has been up nearer the front, but the peloton has completely regrouped here. It's quite a big peloton which has now come back together.
Well, Andy Fenn is not too far away from him, the other British rider on Team Sky.
No, there's a crash too, right in front of Wiggins. That was, we've cut away from it, but I'm pretty sure, yes, let's go back and have a look on the far right.
Well, a bit of a surprise to see a crash there, for we're on a beautiful piece of road, flat road, smooth surface, then all of a sudden there's a touch of wheels.
Well, that was a Katusha rider down. Now, I'm pretty sure it was Smukulis who was sitting on the road.
Yes, it was Smukulis who's on the ground there, and I always hate it to see a rider when a rider holds his shoulder like that, because you know, it's always an indication. Riders are always very, very scared when they go down of two things: an injury to the wrist, and that's usually to the small scaphoid, and when they hold the shoulder like that, it's always an indication that there's a little bit of pain coming from the collarbone.
Well, Astana also in a little, that is Smukulis, Gatis Smukulis, who's down, the Astana rider, I think.
That's right, from
was De Vries possibly, didn't quite catch him.
Again, you can see, that's why, again, Phil, it was a little bit of a risk to see Sir Bradley Wiggins riding so far towards the back end of the main field.
You can see must have got a bird's eye view of that crash, because he must have been right by it.
It was right in the action there. A 3-star section of cobblestones now from Verchin to Maugret, 1.6 kilometers long, section number 22 to go. 27 sections in all, 53 kilometers. That's about 33 miles in old currency.
Well, the Peloton are chasing at 6:38. The lead's gone through. We're just losing one of the United Healthcare riders here. They're a wildcard team, Tanaput. Likely to have been the best performer in this, along with John Murphy and this team. Looking a little bit uneasy on these cobblestones.
Again, look at the dampness every now and again. It's a beautiful day today, one of the dry Paris-Roubaix, but there's always that fear of these are, after all, let's not forget, farm fields. There's lots of clay soil in this part of the world, and if we do get a little bit of rain in the week leading up to Paris-Roubaix, that rain and the water does not absorb into the ground, and all you need is a couple of cars, a couple of press cars to go past in front, or 4,500 amateur cyclists to go the day before, and that puts all the water back onto the cobblestones.
Out of sector 21 for the leaders at Kelnon. The leaders once again preoccupied now. This is the Astana rider, I think, who went down in that little crash. It's Bosic. No, it's not. It's Ajabayev.
You can now start to see gaps appearing. Everybody's just looking to keep themselves as safe as possible. They've done the battle to get into the cobblestones, and that's, as I said a little bit earlier, Phil, the important thing, you find a good position to get onto the cobblestone section, and then you actually ride over them at a fairly smooth speed. The faster speed is maybe the last 500 meters before you actually get onto the cobblestone section. And that's the scary part of this race. You see that dampness at the side of the road, and the fact that it's been pushed onto the cobblestones. You just get some moisture, put it onto a nice piece of granite, and you find out how quite slippery that can be.
Give it a nice polish. Another 3-star section, and the Breakaway getting on with the job, still holding on to 6:37. They came down quite quickly from 9.5, but then it's been holding because the Peloton's been getting a little bit preoccupied with just staying with the group, quite frankly, because they've been splitting up all of the time. They've had a number of crashes now in the Peloton. Luva Westerud went down, 2 in that crash. I think it might have been Luva Westerud that we saw in the first crash for Astana. Mallory also went down with him.
Well, this is why a lot of riders, Phil, in Paris-Roubaix try and look for what I've always called the early morning breakaway, and this certainly was an early morning breakaway. It got clear after just 30 kilometers of racing today, because it's much safer to ride like this, and you don't have the big battle to get into the cobblestone sections. And many of these riders have got into the breakaway so that they can hopefully support their leaders in the latter part of the race, because most of these guys know that the breakaway will get caught. And then when they do get caught by the main field, there's an extra rider up there to help a team leader in the latter part of the event.
Most experienced man in this breakaway, if you catch a glimpse of him, is in the Trek colours. There he is, number 94. That's Gregory Rast. He used to be with Team Radio Shack, and when he was with Radio Shack, he finished 4th in this race. It was a big result for him at the time.
Well, you mentioned his experience. He's participated in Paris-Roubaix 11 times throughout his career, so he certainly knows this race. He's 35 years of age, and they will have all been thinking and hoping that Stein de Volder would have been their man to ride well today without Fabian Cancellara. They were trying to wave the flag high for Team Trek Factory Racing, but unfortunately Stein de Volder was involved in that very nasty crash in one of the early sections of cobblestones.
Now, is this the experience of the 11-time rider then? Rast, he's choosing to ride the cobbles. Oh, he must have been listening. No, he isn't. He's gone over to the left now.
Well, unless you've actually ever done this, and that's why it's so dangerous. You see on the right-hand side there, that where it's quite dangerous, because you don't know when your front wheel goes into there how deep that hole is going to be, and it's a big risk that riders will take. Sometimes they'll prefer to take that risk just to have a slightly smoother ride.
Oh, and this is not looking good. Tim de Klerk here, back wheel puncture for the top sport rider.
Well, he's one of the riders in that leading group of 8, and as you can see there, the yellow motorbike. In fact, it's a motocross bike in Paris-Roubaix, because well, this is a very, very slow change. He's losing himself a good 25 to 30 seconds. That's going to be a long, hard chase for him to get himself back into contention with that leading group of 9 riders who, as I say, at one stage had an advantage of 9.5 minutes.
He got 6:40. He's going to have to chase. Can't too early to start sitting up.
Now you see the flag there, the Cofidis flag on the left-hand side as they come off section number 20. They're now going to take a right-hand turn and start to head up in a north or westerly direction. And so what's going to happen now, from having had that crosswind on that cobblestone section, there will be about to pick up a little bit of a headwind for a period of time as we now start the zigzag part of this course through the battlefields of the north of France.
Still sat at the back there, back out of the Wanty team. At the wildcard team entry, all of the World Tour teams are automatic, and then there's wildcard teams, Bretagne, Top Sport, Wanty, MTN Quebec, are all coming in as an invitation.
Well, there's Wanty in that pale blue and white jersey riding towards the front end of the main field. They're now getting very, very nervous. This section is 90 to number 21. Now there's a man who we may well be talking about a little bit later on. Winner just 7 days ago of the Tour of Flanders, Alexander Christoph.
He's the man of the moment, 13 wins for this season alone, number 21, and a big favourite for this one. He's not had an outstanding performance yet in Paris-Roubaix, but with the form he's nurturing this last few weeks, we put nothing past him.
Well, Bernie Eisel is the man on the front with the beard. Got to be very careful now with all of these beards, Phil. You can never tell whether it's Bernie Eisel or whether it's Bradley Wiggins, although there's a slight difference in the height of the two riders. Bradley Wiggins from the back of the group has moved right up to the front. Now you can see that they're starting to get very, very serious. Look at the length now of that main field and the change in speed.
Watch the clock now as the pressure's gone on at the front, and a lot of Sky riders are caught a long way back down that line at the moment. There's also still 1 or 2 at the front just checking out where the others are, I think, because Christian is still making his way back up the field here.
Peter Sagan here. Now he's had a little bit of a mechanical incident. He's got a teammate up alongside him. This is not a great time to have a mechanical. He's going to have to battle up to the back end of that group and try and scoot around the outside. This section that he's facing up to next one, Phil, 19 to go, is not quite so important. It's the section afterwards, 18 to go, the Forest of Ironberg, where he does not want to be sitting at the back like this.
Well, he's a long way down the line, and he won't make any progress at all while the pressure's on like this. He's got to wait for the team to ease at the front, and Team Sky getting control again there on the right-hand side of our picture. These are the leaders. So as we enter sector 19 at Havloy, we are 6:40 behind the original breakaway of 9 that got clear at 30 kilometres. The beautiful day, clear blue skies. The biggest competition is the dust, I think, on these cobblestones. A lot of riders have gone down in crashes, but nobody significant except Stein de Volder are out of the race. We are now on sector 19 of 27 sectors here.
Well, section number 19, Phil, Avaloui, it's 2.5 kilometres longer, but this to me really is more about the setup for the next section. This is probably the next section, number 18 to go, is one of the most famous as we look there of the Bataille de Denain, the Battle of Denain back in 1700. Today, it's the Battle of the Forest of Ironberg, which is going to be in a few moments' time.
Well, as we're looking here at the peloton, we are without 2 of the men who've dominated this race over the last 10 years, and Tom Bowden had an incredible crash in Paris-Nice. He was riding near the back of the peloton, Paul, and he just fell, touched the mate, and the result was a dislocated shoulder and a fractured wrist in effect, and not here.
A big shame, because I thought that Tom Bowden was in fine form this year as we get a look down there of the mining site of the Forest of Ironberg. Paris-Roubaix, though, has been very good for Tom Bowden over the years, I've got to say, because, you know, he's won Paris-Roubaix on 4 occasions, but him and Fabian Cancellara, 7 times they've won this race in the last 10 years.
And both are out. Cancellara also crashing out in the Classic. So this has left a very, very wide open race, and these boys know it, because look at the speed they're travelling at the moment. They are now racing just simply to get in at the head of the race into the Forest of Ironberg. That's the important thing. This is a long, long stretch of road, the Forest of Ironberg, at 2.5 kilometres, and you've got to be at the front. Well, we've seen Peter Sagan at the back of the race as we race towards this entrance into the forest, and Sagan's in a very, very bad position at the moment to be a player.
Well, there you can see a fluorescent yellow jersey at the back there. That's one of the teammates of Peter Sagan. He had a mechanical incident. This is not the moment to have a mechanical incident. These riders will be lining up for section number 19 to go. After that, 18 to go is the Forest of Ironberg. These riders will know. You can just see the chaos, the risks that riders are taking now to be up at the front. They want to be in the best positions going into the next section of cobblestones. All kinds of risks. They're jumping onto the pavements. Yeah. They're going around the corners to keep themselves positioned at the front end of the main field. Any kind of risk, anything's possible, anything will be done to stay at the front end of the peloton in a race like Paris-Roubaix. Another mechanical over to the right-hand side, a hand up.
Well, that's a real shame to have a flat tyre at this stage of the race as you're racing towards the entrance. Oh, they're jumping over those roads at the back. I thought they'd actually come down there. They're just bunny hopping all of the obstructions in the road. They're desperate moments, these, because they know they can't afford to let the gap open.
And you might have noticed that once again we've picked up the tailwind. This is section number 19 to go for the main field. This is Avermaet, a 4-star section, 2.5 kilometres long. It's very, very fast once they pick up this tailwind. It's chaos. You really want to battle. That's why the riders were taking so many risks to get into the front part of the main field, into this section of cobblestones. But next, Phil, next on the recipe, next on the meal this afternoon is going to be the Forest of Ironberg, which is why this one was such a big battle. Sky got a problem on the right-hand side.
There's a Sky bike lying in the road there, and so hopefully the cameras will pick us up on that. This is a 4-star section. Now the hardest sections condition-wise are 5-star, so this is a rough one. They're going in 6 minutes and a quarter behind the original breakaway of 9, who are still all together.
Well, Lotto Soudal have moved up to the front in the red and white jerseys. Behind them, it's the Sky Armada. But look at the French flags over to the right-hand side there. They were hoping to pick up a tailwind. It has now moved into a crosswind, and that makes it very, very difficult to find a place, Phil, where you can shelter from the wind. There's no forming echelons or diagonal lines across the road on these cobblestone farmyards in the north of France here. It's a question of every man for himself. Over on the right-hand side, BMC, everybody's talking about Greg van Avermaet. The Belgians don't feel that they've got a chance this afternoon. They don't feel that Greg van Avermaet is going to be the winner. I think he might do something special this afternoon, because he's been very, very close since the early part of the Grand Prix E3.
And although he's never done an outstanding performance in this race, Andre Greipel, I see he's got a teammate on the front at the moment. Greipel has said he will be competitive today. Well, we haven't seen anything of him yet, but there's plenty of day left. 6:09. There's a crash on the right into the field. He goes. A United Healthcare boy is down.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, you've got to have eyes in the front and the back of your head in a race like Paris-Roubaix here. Another rider with a problem there was Murillo Fischer of Team FDJ going down. Really, the riders now are starting to get a little bit tired, and the reaction times are slowing down.
Oh, I think that was Luva Vester who's down again. That's his second fall today in Astana colours, who's gone down.
Giovanni Bernardo, the son of the team owner from Team Europe car, also going down there in the green, being slowed by that accident. Again, as I say, Phil, riders now, first of all, taking risks, also starting to get a little bit of fatigue and don't have quite the reaction speeds they need to avoid accidents like that. And the fact that they're at the back end of this line is an indicator that, you know, it's a bit like the distillery, isn't it? All of the cream is now starting to come up to the top.
And I told you the story about Johan Alfredo, who punctured going to the start this morning. He punctured twice since and then fell at the feeding station. Well, guess what? He's just punctured again.
Well, you know, it's amazing. We talked about these very, very famous showers here in the Velodrome in Roubaix. Each shower has got the name of a former winner of Paris-Roubaix put alongside it. Well, you know, every rider has got a story to tell at the end of Paris-Roubaix. Look at
write
the
a book,
speed.
and they have written a book on it. This is Mathieu Boulot of France and Bretagne sitting at the back of the split. Everybody broken off again by the falls. Then his eyes down and chase back, and it's all weakened you, of course, because the toughest sections are still ahead. It'll be a big decision, I think, in the Forest of Ironberg, and it's not that far away.
But look, there's another bottle fallen off there. This race, we talk very often in rally driving. We used to talk about the East African Safari Rally as being a test bed for motor vehicles. Paris-Roubaix is a test bed for bicycles. If anything's going to fall off a bicycle, it's going to be here today in Paris-Roubaix, which is why we've seen there. This really is the R&D, research and development field for today.
It's come down because of the resurgence back there. 5:54 now. These are the 9 men. They've been away since the 30th kilometre of a possible 253 today. Under the disused railway track up front, over the used one, by the way, first of all. This has been a problem in the past when those barriers have come down. I think they have an arrangement now with the SNCF, State Rail Service. The Roubaix d'Arenberg, 5 stars, 2.5 kilometres almost. The flags of Wales are flying on entry, and they'll be for Geraint Thomas.
Well, they'll have to wait a little while because Geraint Thomas was at the back end of the main field. He'll have to take some serious risks now, Phil, to get himself up towards the front end of the peloton if he wants to be in the business end of Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. He's had a very difficult time. It's all about trying to master your luck in a race like this. This Forest of Ironberg was built in the time of Napoleon I, back in the Napoleonic era.
So we're looking now at the tail of the breakaway here. The 9 men have just entered the Forest of Ironberg with a time gap of 5 minutes and 55 seconds. The flags of Flanders, the black, yellow ones down there, and trouble here immediately at the front as they start to dance on these cobblestones. This is Sean Deby, who's lost contact from the 9 leaders. Remember, they got away just 19 miles into the race today, and now they're only 58 from the finish.
Phil, it's almost impossible to explain what this section of cobblestones is like. It is such a monumental section of cobblestones. Everybody talks about it. You can walk down there, and you can actually walk off to the side of the road and you can find wild boar. But funnily enough, it's opened just once a year, and that's for this bike race. The cobblestones, they're not even at all. You hit this cobblestone section in excess of 30 miles an hour. Over the first 50 to 100 meters, you can't actually see anything. Everything in your body is vibrating, including your eyeballs in the sockets.
Well, the crowd waited for this occasion here. There's no vehicles allowed in the forest on a normal day, but this is not a normal day. I just saw the flag of South Africa flying as well, because they've got the first all-African team in the race today, MTN Quebec. Struggling at the back of the race now. These riders just hanging on, trying to get clear onto smooth roads at the top end of the forest. But we have to say, Paul, that the conditions here, if there is such a word we can apply, are perfect.
They are absolutely perfect. This is Sarah Montins of IAM Cycling at the front. He's ridden away, but you can see the way his machine is bouncing all over the place there. These riders are lucky because it's almost calm for them. They don't have to battle for position, but when the main field comes in a few moments' time, it's chaos. It's chaos trying to stay at the front, avoiding bikes, avoiding bottles, avoiding the crowd at the side of the road, and trying to get through this section of cobblestones, which dates back to the era of Napoleon I.
So Samartine's trying to just draw them out to make them chase him, because they've got to keep the pressure on here. The gap's now 5:52. They've lost 4 seconds since they entered the stretch here, and the peloton have yet to come on board. And Matska is in second place for Boro Argon.
Phil, this is a historic piece of cobblestone. It's magnificent. You can see the side of the road there. I think they must be using that for horse training in this day and age there, because there's no way that you could ride on the left-hand side there. You have to ride down these cobblestones, which have been down since the 1800s. The crowd know this place. They know that this is not the place where you're going to win Paris-Roubaix, but so many riders in the past have lost all chances of winning Paris-Roubaix on this section of 2.5 kilometers of hell.
Not least the great Johan Museeuw, who crashed here and badly hurt his knee. It was almost a career-ending injury. Anyway, the exit of the Forest of Ironberg for the one leader here, Alexis Saramotins of IM Cycling. A huge crowd coming out, and that's because they'll all be heading for the cars very shortly. and getting across to the next sector of cobblestones. Those flags of Norway there, are they for Christoph, the man who's ruling the roost there this year in one-day races and in stage races for that matter, and aiming today to become the first Norwegian ever to win this race. So as the leaders leave the forest, it'll be a little bit of a wait before the main field join the forest. Saint-Martin is the man out front. The field at 5 minutes 51 seconds.
Well, these guys now, Phil, section number 18 to go. They can tick that off. But to put it into perspective, they've still got 17 sections of cobblestones before they get to this rather smooth velodrome here in Roubaix.
It is a beautifully smooth. It was resurfaced about 2 years ago, I think it was, as we're watching the riders finishing on the amateur Tour de Flanders at the moment.
Puncture's got a little bit of a problem there coming through the Forest of Ironberg. He's just pointing to the back wheel there. That would be an indication he's got a softening back flat tyre. He wants to talk to the neutral service vehicle. This company, Mavic, have supported the sport for many, many years. That yellow neutral service vehicle has looked after a whole host of riders. Back with the main field now, they're queuing up, in charge of the light brigade.
5:51. This is the long approach by the peloton now as we head up towards the Forest of Ironberg. Looking down from the helicopter, the peloton are about to enter the Forest of Ironberg, 5 minutes and 51 seconds behind. We still have the one leader out front, Avermaet, but the rest of the breakaway are after him. Into the forest for the leaders, for the main field now.
Well, the main field, 5 minutes and 50 seconds, but look at the difference. You can see the difference in the speed, Phil, of this group that's coming in 5.5 minutes, 5:50 seconds behind the main field, main group. Well, this is the Forest of Ironberg at 2.5 kilometers long, a 5-star rating. This is one of the most difficult sections of cobblestones as the main field charge in.
Well, as far as we know, the only favourite out of the race was Stein de Volder. He crashed a while back now. Peter Sagan was caught at the rear, and I don't know if he's managed to make it up towards the front, but if this field splits, Peter Sagan might be in a difficult position. And they've got a crash right on the ground here, and this is a nasty fall at the moment. It looks to me as though it is the leader of the...
Shane Archibald, the Kiwi.
It is Shane Archibald, the Kiwi rider.
From Bora Aragon there. He went down very... These
Right
cobblestones are unrelenting as we go back to the calm of being in the leading group now. Ironberg Forest, Phil, is chaos for everybody. It's a question of survival. There's elimination goes on there. Lotto Soudal today. Well, there is Peter Sagan. Now, he is one of the riders.
An incredible ride.
A lot of people... He's over there on the left-hand side of the road. A few moments ago, he was at the back of the main field.
Yeah.
When it needs to be, here he is at the front.
Well, that was an incredible performance. He was a long, long way down the line, about 4 kilometres before the entry into the forest. He's moved right up. Now, sad to see the crash there of Shane Archibald. That's a hard baptism for the Bora Aragon rider from New Zealand. 5:47 now. We know that Greipel must be pretty well up here, otherwise his team wouldn't be working for him quite so much. Ethics have gone off the front for the minute, which is unusual, so too have Team Sky.
Well, I can't see any of the black and blue jerseys of Team Sky close to the front end of the main field. It's extremely important. I've always felt it's extremely important to ride near the front in the Forest of Ironberg. Just look at that. That is the chaos. That is the surface, and there are so many of those cobblestone sections have been lifted over the years. Many of them have actually moved because of the subsidence of the mining underneath. In fact, one year they didn't take part in Paris-Roubaix on this cobblestone section because of the subsidence. But it's back now. Again, there's a Sky rider in about 7th or 8th position.
It looks like Geraint Thomas as well. Just tucked in there nicely. But there's a long line down here where there is nobody from Ethics either, just well spread out riders, and I still can't pick out so far Bradley Wiggins. He was riding very far back earlier on.
Well, that was Ian Stannard who just went through there. We're looking back a long way to see if Sir Bradley Wiggins is coming forward. It looks as if it could be him moving up towards there. But this is a long line of riders.
I think that was Wiggins just went through, but he's still a long way down. But the peloton's still intact. Heinrich Haussler, the champion of Australia. Wow, he's put himself in a great position just now up at the front in that a greenish coloured top to his jersey.
Well, we talked a little earlier about how important it is to have a strong team down towards the end. BMC Racing, I think today, this could be the day for Greg van Avermaet. He's been very consistent since the early part of this season, and now's the time when you've got to show the strength of your team.
It's 4 seconds now. Could be a wet and early shower for anybody who rides on the left of the road just now.
Well, this is the Pont-Gibus section of cobblestones, Wallers, section number 17 to go. It's got its nickname from Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle. So you can see now, I think the firepower's gone out a little bit, but again, we're starting to see Sky getting themselves organised and moving back up to the front end of the main field. Well, the traffic, look at that. Phil, you can just see now, in fact, the barriers are going down.
Oh, my goodness. Whoa. Well, no, this will cause very, very much consternation. The riders must stop. The train won't.
The rule is you are supposed to stop once the lights go red.
This is a serious situation because those numbers will be disqualified from the race, whoever they were, if they know who they were. Well, there's the train. My goodness me.
Wow. Well,
that's about as close as we have ever seen in the history of Paris-Roubaix. The thing about the French is they put the barriers down when the train is almost on the crossing, and they usually go very quickly, but they've let them go. The barriers are up.
Well, the rule says that, Phil, that if the light... Well, the fact that the barriers are going... Well, this is a replay, actually. The barriers are going down.
This is the situation. The barriers dropping, the peloton continuing to run the barriers. Now, this is an absolutely stupid thing to do because that was a very fast TGV that was coming through, and they won't slow down. And those riders, if their numbers are noted, will be disqualified from this race. Back up for 4:56. 84.5 kilometres to go. Well,
the race referees there, Phil, are slowing down the race because a number of these riders have gone through the railway.
They'll stop the ride. The rules are quite simple. When the barriers come down, the race must stop, and you lose the time, I'm afraid. If it was the breakaway who was stopped, then it would be status quo, but they would allow the breakaway the same advantage they had when they were stopped. Unfortunately for the peloton, there's not much you can do. So they're stopping the peloton till it regroups by the look of it.
Well, I think it'd be very difficult, Phil, to find out the riders who actually broke the rules there and disqualify them from the race, because I'm not sure there were enough referees there to be able to do that. But this did happen in the Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago, where they disqualified the riders who finished 3rd, 4th and 5th.
Yep.
I remember Peter van Petegem saying at this time, if this had happened in Belgium, they would have stopped the train.
Well, the story was that they had an arrangement, but I guess they didn't have an arrangement. So that is a major problem, and it's a problem which will be ongoing throughout the rest of the day. Here is the last rider in the race now, coming through the Forest of Ironberg. So a long way behind right now. And the Voiture Balai is probably where he'll finish up, the last vehicle on the road there. Now there, they've stopped the peloton. So they're now allowing all of these guys behind to come through who were stopped at the crossing. Now some of the head of the peloton, of course, went through before the barriers came down, but the middle of the peloton were definitely dodging the barriers.
Yeah, which is why I'm saying, Phil, it's going to be very difficult for them to apply the rule and disqualify the riders who went through there, because the referees wouldn't have been actually stopped in position to recognise the number. So I think what they'll do, they'll neutralise the race for a short while, allow the riders who were stopped by the train to catch back up, and then the race will get going again. Those are the riders who were delayed by the train, so they'll shortly be back in contact with the front of the main field.
Well, we'll have to wait and see and keep you informed as we know exactly what the decision is.
The advantage in a situation like this is for the breakaway. If they went through before the barriers and the red light started to flash, so they are allowed to continue in their race. They will not be slowed down. Advantage to them for being in the breakaway, and any time that they gain from a moment like that will be to their advantage.
Well, there you can see the Champion of France has been stopped down there as well. He got round just.
Tell you what, that was pretty close.
Well, the trains in France, in Britain, they dropped the barriers about 5 minutes before the train arrived. In France, they drop it about 90 seconds. And they were taking a serious risk. by jumping those barriers.
Well, we talked a little earlier, Phil, about Christian Knies, who'd done a lot of work very early on. And because of that little bit of chaos there, the advantage of the breakaway group was increased by around about 30 seconds. So it's not really affected the outcome of the race, I don't think.
No, but the peloton could have afforded to completely stop there and then would still have had time later. But anyway, we'll see what decisions are made, if any. 5:31 is now currently the gap. We're back up with the leaders who have completely rejoined. 9 riders in front. A little bit of chaos, but then, hey, this is Paris-Roubaix. .5:30 holding at the moment into sector now 16 here at Ornain.
Well, every time you come to Paris-Roubaix, there is a story, and that was an incredible story. Talk about the TGV, Le Train Grand Vitesse.
I know.
Well, that put a little bit of spice into Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. We're back now with an 8-man leading group, a 5.5-minute advantage, 82 kilometres to go. It's still all down and heads in for the count.
Now the regroupment at the front, status quo. Sky's got back in control in those black jerseys. The Lotto Jumbo team also up there in the yellow jerseys.
Just mentioning before, Phil, you talked about Christian Knies having to do a lot of work for Geraint Thomas to pace him back into the main field. We saw him have a flat tire. We saw him have that nasty little accident just before the feeding zone, when in fact Christian Knies is back at the front end of the main field. Sky, having had a little bit of a difficult tactical time going through the Forest of Ironberg, have managed to regroup and get themselves back together.
Well, how often have we seen this? Sky in control again at the front now. As we look at the tail of the field here, this is the breakaway in Paris-Roubaix. 5:23 the gap. It started to come down again. Another crash, and a Sky rider gone down. And it looks to me, is it Geraint Thomas? It is Geraint Thomas who's gone down right on that right-hander. Watch the top of the picture here.
And he was at the front end of the main field, Phil. He was in the top 10 to 12 positions. And he just lost it a little bit going around that corner. Bloodied on his elbow there to the left-hand side. He's waiting for a new machine from the team car. But he looks a bit stunned with that. But it was at the front end of the peloton. And you can see it's the pavement. The riders are taking crazy risks. They're doing this because they know how important it is to attack the cobblestones close to the front.
See, he seems to have just slipped on the dust on the paving itself.
But he's up and riding again. I just saw the mechanic had pushed him away. He's got himself a new bike, and he's going to have a pretty hard chase. His jersey's a little bit cut up there. A crash like this, you've got to psychologically get yourself back in. Don't panic. Try and use the cars if you can to get yourself back up to the main field.
Well, Geraint Thomas is the man on form, but he's also the key strength for Sir Bradley Wiggins today. Geraint Thomas, only 28 years of age, by the way. He stands at 6 feet. And he's already had a great win. He became the first British rider just over a week ago to win the Grand Prix Arlbecker, E3 they call it now, which is the name of the highway across Europe there.
Just moved on to a spare machine there. In fact, he's moved back onto that Dogma 8 that he's got there, and it's got rear suspensions in. I wonder if that's going to make his ride a little bit easier. His face looks fairly concentrated. You mustn't panic at a moment like this, but Phil, you can't push yourself into the red zone, because then you won't be able to recover a little bit later on. Use the cars, use the chaos, stay calm. If you're going to come back in a race like this, you will come back naturally by the flow of things.
Commonwealth Games road race champion, former champion of Great Britain, and Thomas is a real fighter, this man. And he'll come back by the look of it. He's gritting his teeth, but he's using valuable energy, which was really supposed to be for Bradley Wiggins later on today. Well, Ken van Bilsen, Cofidis, trying to tempt out the peloton.
Well, Cofidis, a local team. In fact, their head offices are about 5 kilometres away from the velodrome here, so important for them to ride well in a race like Paris-Roubaix. Although I'm not sure that this young man has got such a big tab on his back that they're going to allow him too much freedom. In fact, they're allowing him to ride off the front end of the group. I think we're looking for a little bit of calm after all the chaos of the high-speed trade going across the race route. Big power there of Stannard on the right-hand side for Team Sky. He's got the Union flag around his shirt. But Peter Sagan, this is the man that people said is not going to ride well today. He's got the confidence.
Well, Sagan, He wants to give a result to his bosses, and he's not leaving it to the finish. He packs a big sprint if he can get to the finish in a small group of riders. Just approaching the 50 kilometres to go now, about 31.5 miles from the finish.
Well, Peter Sagan, if you remember, Phil, we've always classified him as a little bit of a sprinter until he won Ghent-Wevelgem. He was in a leading group of riders. He didn't even wait for the sprint. He took off and won it on his own.
So a man we've all come to know around the United States for his great riding as well. Peter Sagan is on the attack, and Andre Greipel is also still very much in this race. So Greipel here deciding the line, not going quick enough. He just flicked to the left to move forward a little bit. Oh, there's another. No, is that another? It is another crash on the corner. Yes.
Well, it's getting a little bit slippery now. A rider from AG2R looks like Johan van Summeren, the former winner of this race.
It is Van Summeren, one of only 2 previous winners in the race, and there he is.
Well, also down on the ground there, number 33 has gone down. That's Matti Breschel. Well, he's one of the riders who would have been up there to help Peter Sagan. He's a good rider for a race like this. It was a big ally to Fabian Cancellara many years ago. It's a little bit dusty. This is even more treacherous sometimes in the dry because you've got the dust on the surface of the cobblestones, making it a very slippy event. Getting grippy now, isn't it?
I hope Matty's okay, because his wife has given birth in the last 48 hours, and he was riding this race for his newborn daughter today and wanted to do a good ride, and he was obviously right up in the thick of it there. Didn't look too good, sat down on the road. Support for the French
spectator there wearing an Ijsborg jersey. If you're an older supporter of the professional cycling,
I can't remember.
He was in the wrong position there, and Johan van Summeren struggling there to get that wheel going over.
Well, these are desperate moments yet again as riders dive for wheels, dive for the smoothest part of the road as they head down towards the end of Sector 11. They have split up once again under pressure, and it's almost who will be the next rider to go down. This is Pozzato trying to come back from his problems. He's got a long empty road to bridge there.
Yes, I can tell you it's not Andrea Taffy. It is, in
you
fact,
could tell,
Pozzato.
Couldn't you? Yeah, wrong colours.
Well, Ethics Quickstep once again trying to lay down the law in this race here this afternoon. Every time it starts to slow down now, they will start to hit this group with a hammer and try and blow it apart if they can. And that group, which was a lot of riders before now, is really starting to shrink in numbers.
Oh, we've seen some terrific one-day classic races this year. So many riders have felt they could win these events, and the same has been carried over to this race today, Paris-Roubaix, because even though Ethics Quickstep appear to be in control with the strength at the front, there is an awful lot of riders still very much in this race, and we're setting this up for a surprise, I think.
Yeah, but Phil, we're still looking at a good hour, 15 hour, 20 minutes to go, and there is still a lot of very difficult cobblestone sections still on the horizon. This race is far from done, and you know, you never really get a surprise victor in a race like Paris-Roubaix.
We're now a minute and 43 back of the leaders, and it's all because of the incredible infighting which is going on amongst the peloton. Attack follows counter-attack here. Nobody is saving anything for the remaining 30 miles of this race, and there are still a lot of riders could win this as they continue to head on to the next sector of Pavé, but still we have some really bad stretches to come.
Oh yes, very shortly we'll be lining up for section number 9 to go towards the finish, the Méringie de Avelin section, and also this section of Mons-en-Pévèle, and that is a very, very nasty section, knocks in at a 5-star rating.
Mons is next, and it's not very far away for the breakaway at least, which is coming very close to the proximity. They're on it, in fact. A minute 42 is the gap. This is sector 10.
Well, they are very, very lucky, I can tell you from experience, that this is a dry section of cobblestones today. 5-star rating, 3 kilometers long. First introduced into Paris-Roubaix back in 1978. In fact, a former teammate of mine, Jean-François Pecheur, discovered this section of cobblestones. And I really don't know why he decided to put it in, because it is nasty.
Well, this is where very often the breakaway will slip away here, but at the moment there's a lot of riders close to contention. 7 riders left up front. Everybody's just thinking of their own road to Roubaix here, and still at the back of the breakaway, Frederick Backert just hanging on and hoping.
But Phil, if you look at the body languages of those riders, they are just rolling the gears over. They don't have the energy in their pedaling style anymore. They're starting to pay for the effort of being in that breakaway for such a long period of time. Just having a quick look at this group here, you can see that there is Bradley Wiggins, there is Andre Greipel. This group has actually swelled in numbers quite a bit over the last few kilometres.
Sky appear to be down to 3 riders left here in the front group at the moment, as Jens Kukkeler of Orica Green has tagged on to the back of that group. 50 kilometres to go, slightly out. As we look at the 50 kilometre board there, we're saying it's 47.6. I bet the riders would hope that we're right and that the markers are wrong, but I'm afraid that won't be the case. 1:39 is the gap.
Right, well, this is now Mons-en-Pavel for the group of the real contesters at 5-star section, the Mons-en-Pavel section, 10 to go to the finish, 3 kilometres long, almost 2 miles.
Sky appear to have 3 riders left in this front group at the moment. One is not Geraint Thomas. Peter Sagan is here, Stuybar is here, Jens de Bussche, the champion of Belgium, is also here, Greg van Avermaet. These are the riders potentially. Nicky Terpstra is here, along with Zdeněk Stuybar, Van Kielsbroek, Stein van den Berg, other riders out to help Terpstra and Stuybar. And as far as we know, Lars Bohm is here as well, the man that won the 5th stage of the Tour de France in such fine style last year over the cobbled roads. Now, Christoph should also be in here since they bridged the gap, but we haven't seen him recently.
Well, a lot of riders didn't manage to recover after they were left behind in the crosswinds leading up into Orshi. Most of the big names have managed to come back forward. With that fluorescent helmet over on the right-hand side, you might just spot Peter Sagan. He's sitting pretty comfortably. Looking at the number of riders here, I wouldn't be surprised also to see John Degenkolb in this group. But this win, Phil, is going to be a major factor on the run down towards the finish, because whenever they pick up this crosswinds, if there's a rider feeling very strong on the running down towards the finish, he should be able to create a distance between himself and everybody else.
Flag there flying for Geraint Thomas of Wales, but he's had such an horrendous day, a real taste of Paris-Roubaix today. 2 punctures and a crash that we know of. And I don't think he's got back up into this front group. Haven't seen him for a while. Incredibly difficult race to televise because the camera bikes have to get in amongst this, and it's not always possible. 1:35 is the gap at the moment. Just looking here at the back of the gap now, and it's Ralf Matska who might be being caught out.
Well, these guys, Phil, now they really are very much just surviving 1.5 minutes. And at speeds like this now, they're not looking at very much more than a kilometre or so advantage. And once you see them scrambling over to the left or the right-hand side of the road, looking for a little bit of smoothness, that's an indicator that the power is starting to go out of the pedalling action, and they really are starting to eat into the cobblestones, hitting every cobblestone almost individually. It really starts to bounce.
And there must be now considered a serious danger. John Degenkolb. He's in with a real chance here, winner of Paris-Roubaix, of the Milan-San Remo.
Can you imagine coming onto the velodrome here, Phil? John Degenkolb, Peter Sagan, Greg van Avermaet. What a finish that would be. It would be a very close finish. And in fact, Christoph has said he's not scared at all about the sprint on this track here in Roubaix.
Well, he's got such great form at the moment now as the attacks continue once more, as Sepp van Mark, who says he's not sure where he is with his form, he's now putting the pressure down the front. He's a man who knows the podium here in Roubaix, and he's been in the sprint before for the win, didn't quite make it.
Well, this is Sepp van Mark. He's been riding a very cautious race up to now, and he's decided this is a good moment to make the move. He looks over his shoulder to see whether or not he's got the gap. There are the leaders, and they're about to be wiped away with just 22 kilometres to go.
So the race comes together with a total of 50 kilometres, the spread for the breakaway. All the rest have been in the lead in this race. They're left with 22.5 kilometres to go. They got away at 30. It's a very select bunch that's done it, and Sepp van Mark is the first to reach him and put the hammer down at the front.
Yes, but he didn't get the gap that he was looking for. It's a general regrouping at the front, but now we're starting to see a rather serious little move organise themselves. This is the moment when the junction has been made, but the fact that they've sat down like this, Phil, indicates it'll probably come back together.
Well, we're kind of all together, and it is still literally anyone's Paris-Roubaix right now. Nobody wants to say enough is enough. Well, a lot of those flags were the British flag there. There's the American flag flying proudly as well as they're coming to the sharp end of Paris-Roubaix this year. Just 22 kilometres left to go. The wind, for the moment, has swung towards the head of the race. And there's a lot of riders still left here who could pull off the big surprise. We've seen Bradley Wiggins try his move. It didn't work, but he's still there. We've seen Sepp van Mark make a move. Jens de Boucher. The one man we haven't seen go yet, the two men in fact, Lars Bohm and Nicky Terpstra.
Well, this is Gouger. He was the rider from AG Duar, is the rider from AG Duar who was in that early breakaway. This is a last-minute attack for him, hoping that in the confusion of the junction behind, he will be given a little bit more of leeway. There's Lars Bohm in the turquoise jersey there and the yellow sunglasses of Team Astana. He loves this kind of race, a man who has been multi-titled in the cyclo-cross discipline of the sport. He really does enjoy Paris-Roubaix. 115, looks over his shoulder, tête de la course. He knows, though, Phil, there's still 5 sections of cobblestones to go.
Completely cracked at the moment. After such a long breakaway, 200 kilometres up front. Incredible long way, and not easy kilometres because the race has been turning full pedals today. Incredibly quick race.
Well, I'll tell you what, after that little turn of speed there, Bradley Wiggins has got himself back into the group. Peter Sagan is in the group.
Yeah.
And once again, it's Gruppo Compacto at 21 kilometres, 13 miles to go.
But a very elite Gruppo Compacto now. The Peloton seems to have been blasted away across the plains of northern France to make another move. I think it's Khrushchev here trying a little dig at the front for Astana. They've still got numbers up here. They've got 3 riders, Astana.
Yeah, well, they need to be very attentive now, because as they go across the railway line there, the TGV, the Train Grand Vitesse in France, that travels at 300 kilometres an hour. They're lining up now for Confin-en-Pévèle, section number 5 to go.
We're now approaching the 20-kilometre marker here, and all of the riders that want to win Paris-Roubaix are in this very select group. They are now opening a gap. Everybody has been caught, more or less now all together. As they look at each other here, there's still some big names in this group who have not yet played their cards.
Well, in a little bit of time, Phil, they're going to take a left-hand turn onto the section of cobblestones. That's the section of Confin-en-Pévèle. It's almost 2 kilometres long. It's slightly uphill, very, very difficult. They'll have a crosswind to begin with, and then a tailwind once they get to the right-hand turn part way up. But look at the length of that group of riders there. This is real serious racing now as they come down to the last half an hour or so of the event.
16 riders down there, and they're looking into the distance. There's the peloton, so they haven't really got away from what is a large group of chasers at the moment, being led by the Lotto Jumbo team, trying to bring the race back together at this stage.
Well, Greg van Avermaet is in this group. Bradley Wiggins is in this group. Alexander Christoph is in this group. These are serious names. All of the guys we talked about at the start of Paris-Roubaix are here at the moment, thinking about the next section of cobbles coming up. I just noticed Luca Paolini there, the winner of Ghent-Wevelgem. He's the rider with the beard. Seems as if to be a top professional bike rider these days, you have to have a beard. This is the corner, the left-hand corner.
Well, that's for the second group as well. They're trying to put things to rights here. The spread is still 19 seconds, but that's between these two and the other riders who are trying to stay at that lead group. We're on to Sector 5 now at Canfin. This is a 4-star stretch of nearly 1.5 kilometres, just under a mile.
Well, this section of cobblestones, a number of years ago, I remember a young bike rider in a group with George Hincapie. His name was Tom Bowden on that occasion. Hincapie crashed and Tom Bowden rode on to finish on the podium alongside Johan Museeuw, and that was the start of a long relationship that Tom Bowden had with this bike race. 4 times a winner, and unable to participate this year after a sad and unfortunate crash in Paris-Nice where he dislocated his shoulder. The gap between the 2 leaders and the rest of the elite group of men in Paris-Roubaix there, not very much at all.
20 kilometres on that board. So as you look at the cobblestones glistening under the sunlight but not under the wetness, I'm delighted to say so. The riders probably here now. There can't be a lot of energy left in any of these riders because the pressure has been on since the moment this race began. And only Sky represented now by Bradley Wiggins. Everybody else has gone.
Fluorescent crash helmet in the middle of the road there. That's Peter Sagan. Leaping onto his wheel is Greg van Avermaet. There's only one rider from Sky, as you mentioned, Phil, left in the group, Bradley Wiggins. This is the grippy part of the course. Well, Sepp van Mark somehow has managed to ride across the gap, and he's got himself to the leading two riders.
Just taken on in that yellow jersey at the back. Now, this right, the two leaders are splitting up here. I think this is Tom van Ashbrook here, who's been struggling at the front for Lotto, but he's going to try and go alone by himself all the way to the finish. He's leaving himself about 18 kilometres to go. Well, Lotto have played some good cards today. They really have tried to get something out of this year's Paris-Roubaix, and it was all started by Andre Greipel to loosen it up, not for himself but for the others. Jens de Boucher, champion's ridden a great race.
Well, the wind really is playing a major factor in these cobblestone sections here this afternoon, Phil.
That's Jurgen Roelants, who's actually up here, former champion of Belgium.
And he said at the start of today's race, Phil, that what I'm going to do here is I'm just working for the team. He's again himself, let's not forget, a former Belgian national champion. Look at the little bit of chaos going on down towards the back here now.
No wins for Roelants, in fact, since March, when he finished third in the Tour de France. The last time he won a race was the Stage 5 of the Tour of the Mediterranean back in 2013. But he is very much a regular classic bike rider.
I tell you, if you wanted to get into the advertising business today, probably a very good medium would be to buy yourself a flag, because these flags are completely straight out and they really are giving us an indication of what the wind condition is like.
Well, Jurgen Roelants, probably best remembered in Australia for his terrible crash 3 years ago in the Tour Down Under, when he broke his 6th vertebrae there and just had to watch the rest of the race, and he got himself back into good enough shape by the end of the year to finish 7th in the Olympic Games in London.
Yep, and as we said earlier, Phil, former national road racing champion, always a solid man to have on board. They've just ridden off that section of cobblestones now. They will be shortly lining up to what I've always regarded as a very decisive section of cobblestones, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, which has got a very nice cafe at the end of it. I think it only opens once a year and makes a killing with the number of coffees and beers that it sells to the people who turn out to watch the finale of Paris-Roubaix. He's not far away from entering onto the Carrefour de l'Arbre, and he'll hit what they call in this area the pavé bleu.
On to number 4, 4 sectors of cobblestones left. That's about 5.5 kilometres of cobbled roads today. We're on the Carrefour de l'Arbre. 5 stars and just over 2,000 metres, and it's a Belgian rider taking them onto the cobblestones. And Belgian riders have won this race 56 times out of the possible 113. Not quite so, because we had 2 winners one year.
And I tell you, yeah, that was 1949 exactly. 2 winners given the overall victory. Just looking there at the cobblestones there, Phil, you can see how smooth they are.
Still a big group here. Still anybody could come out of that group with a final lunge for the finishing line. This is the rough section. It's wet here, it's treacherous.
It's a dangerous section here, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, Phil, because you've got the cobbles, but on the side you've got like a ridge of cobbles, and riders will jump onto the smooth part and then try to jump their bike, bunny hop their bike back onto the cobblestones to get around the corner. He looks pretty good here, Jurgen Roelants, I would have to say, but he's knowing that there's going to be a response coming behind.
He's got the legs. 7th in this year's Grand Prix E3, which was won by Kevin Thomas. 7th in the Ghent-Wevelgem, won by Luca Paolini, who's back in that chase. And 8th last weekend in the Tour of Flanders. He's got the form, but can he hold them off? 15.8 kilometres to go.
Well, I tell you what, this section of cobblestones, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, has seen some very nasty crashes in the past. A couple of years ago, we had Stuybar almost taken out in an accident on this section. And also, let's not forget that Thor Hushovd, who was in the chance of getting himself a victory, also had a very nasty accident on this section. I tell you what, though, for the wind today really has got up out on the course, because when you look at the flags here in the velodrome, they're hardly moving at all.
Just look at these roads now, as it looks like. Is that Ian Stannard trying to get through at the back there as well? 16 seconds the spread. These riders are hanging on the cobbles and trying to give it their best shot on the smoother roads right now. But Jürgen Roelandts has played his card, and he's going to have to try and go to the finish now. He might be being joined here.
Well, in fact, there's a lot of work being done. There's 2 riders have managed to get into this group from Team Sky, and that number of riders has swelled once again. The wind, though, Phil, when you look at the flags there, is unbelievable. It will be the rider's enemy, and it could be the thing that really decides who wins this bike race at the end of the day.
I think the situation is, though, they've turned into the headwind at the moment, which rather favours the chasers. And they've managed to get across that gap and hook up again. There's an awful lot of riders at this stage of a Paris-Roubaix, which leaves the man that just hits it right, makes the move, wins the day. 12 seconds to go to Jürgen Roelandts. He's not getting clear yet.
Luke Rowe is the rider from Team Sky who's managed to recover and get back into this group with Bradley Wiggins. Wiggins are still in with a chance here this afternoon, but you know, this is really throwing out the sandbags now, as everybody is just trying to hang on to the wheel in front, and that's when these accidents happen. I've seen so many accidents happen on this final part of the Carrefour de l'Arbre. There it is. There is the cafe just over on the left-hand side. They've got this right-hand bend. They go across a nice little smooth piece of tarmac for a short while and then back on to another section. Oh, there's another crash.
Was a rider, top of our picture, I think a rider went down. But everybody else seems to be all okay as they come off the sector 4. Still trying to grab the wheels. Jens de Boucher has dropped to the back and looks to be in a bit of trouble now, the champion of Belgium. Coming off the field there. This is still Dimitri Grutstev. He's still out. No, it is Bolek Bosic. I thought he was, but I thought he wouldn't be here at this stage of the race. But there he is. He's been there all the time. And Bocic's now about to be picked up by a group which is still just about holding off a very determined chase there. But surely the riders are going to bridge that gap now. Still into an unfavourable wind.
Well, that's the big problem, Phil, as they start to zigzag around the northern part of France now. They're going to start to pick up this headwind. This is Lars Boom. He knows the area. Look who's on his wheel, though. Number 11 there. And that, of course, is John Deckenkolb. And not far behind him is Greg van Avermaet.
It's hurting at the moment. At this stage of the race, it's hurting for everybody. The man that the Belgians always used to say, the one that suffers 10 minutes longer than the other wins. 10 minutes is an awful long time.
On the left-hand side of the road, second position, Peter Sagan. Behind him is Zdeněk Zdajbar of Team Ethics Quickstep. The big boys are there. Here is Jürgen Roelandts. The gap is not very much at all. We're inside of 10 miles to go to the finish, 14.5 kilometres. Peter Sagan, I think, is riding exceptionally well today, maybe spurred on and motivated by the fact that he's got a big meeting with the big boss tonight, Oleg Tinkoff, just across the border in Belgium.
Well, this looks like Jens Kukkela from Orica Green Edge also still there and driving at the front of that chase group and still looking pretty strong at this stage of the race. But take your hats off to the 29-year-old Jürgen Roelandts, because he sat out there and he's holding them off. But how much longer? This looks like Kukkela coming across.
Well, it's not going to be very much longer there, because as they come off, it's very fortunate because on this section of cobblestones there is some smoother surface over on the right-hand side. As you can see, they're off that now. They'll be heading down towards the small town of Gruzon and Chéran. And then they start to line themselves up for what I think really is the last serious piece of cobblestones, and that's the cobblestones between Willems and M.
Gregory Rast still tacked on to the back there, having been in the breakaway all day. A tremendous ride. Luke Rowe's the rider just in front of him, and number 21 is Christoph. If he can use his sprint on the track, he might have a chance, but he's still a long way. It's been a tough last 30 kilometres for Christoph, chasing down everything.
Well, he might be struggling, Phil, but it doesn't matter if you're a sprinter, because he's still there. He's still hanging in. He's still keeping in contact with the wheel in front of him.
13 kilometres to go. The kilometres to these rides must feel like the length of a mile right now, because it's an awful long way still. Sepp van Mark is the rider in the yellow jersey, and he's come off the front now.
Lars Boom. Everybody's starting to look around a little bit. They were obviously concerned about the number of fast men in this group, and that's a dangerous moment for this to happen. You don't want to take Peter Sagan, you don't want to take Alexander Christoph or any of these fast guys onto the velodrome down towards the finish. This is a move now coming by Lars Boom. He just saw that move as the Ethics Quick Step rider moved away.
13,
he said, right, bang, and I'm going.
13 kilometres to go. Boom is trying to repeat his magical day in the Tour de France over these cobblestones on stage 5 a year ago, but they're after him.
4th and 5th position on the road. Their jerseys are very similar in colour. The national champions, both Peter Sagan and Zdeněk Stybar. It seems as if they're following each other, marking each other here this afternoon.
They've tamed the big Lars Boom at the moment and put him back in his place. Degenkolb is right up there. He was second to Terpstra 1 year ago. But they've all come back together again, and they're now just over 7 miles from the velodrome. Time for Lars Boom to take a drink.
Over on the left, taking on board a gel to keep the energy level topped up. Peter Sagan, I wonder if he's going to go a little bit better here this afternoon, but there's no respite now as we come down the last 15 minutes or so of racing. Well, that's Yves Lampaert from Ethics Quickstep who's managed to get out of that group there. They're now going through the small town of Chirin, and up there with him, number 61, Greg van Avermaet, finally.
Yeah, he put the move in. Well, he's gone at 11.5 kilometres to go, 12 when he made the move. But the last year's winner still in that group, just behind. This is Degenkolb.
Well, it puts a bit of pressure on everybody now in this group, because everybody knows Greg van Avermaet has had some great form. He had a very nasty crash just a little while ago in the Grand Prix E3, and he's fought his way back from that.
Boucher still tagged on to the back of the race. So the Tinkoff rider just there waiting there is Peter Sagan in his champion's jersey, deciding that maybe no brakes will work and he better start thinking about getting up for the sprint on the velodrome. Degenkolb clearly doesn't think the same way. The gap 11 seconds.
Well, the gap is not very much, 11 seconds with 11 kilometres to go, and just to give you a little bit of a warning, there is another railway crossing just a bit further down the road here. Giant Alpecin trying to pull all of this back. They're thinking about trying to negate that breakaway group for their man, of course, John Degenkolb, who is stuck in the main field behind. Or is he coming across here to his teammate?
There are 2 guys up front here. If this happens, they'll have a tandem going. This is Lampaert. I don't think he's going to work somehow with Greg van Avermaet to take him clear of the likely win by Nicky Terpstra. 10 kilometres left to go, 6 miles to go. But looking at the counter move, we've just gone past the 10 kilometre to go now. Greg van Avermaet is up front with Yves Lampaert. But John Degenkolb, who's just caught up with De Backer, we've now got 2 riders on the same team trying to chase them down.
Yeah, De Backer went out first of all as the pilot fish, if you like, and once he saw the move, in fact, then John Degenkolb jumped across to join his teammate, Sepp van Mark, a big sign on the side of the road. They're all shouting for him here this afternoon, but we're really getting into the closing part now. As they get to the end of this long stretch of smooth road, there's last year's winner now, Nicky Terpstra, Bradley Wiggins, number 51, champion of Belgium, number 126, Peter Sagan, all of these big names here. But they do realise that they've now got to put the money on the table if they want to win Paris-Roubaix.
There's still a blanket over all of these leaders here, 13-second spread. Lampaert goes round on the back wheel of a big danger here in Greg van Avermaet. He's not helping him at all. I don't think he will help him at all either, but it could all change if the 2 giant riders come across. That'll put 4 strong riders up front.
Well, there's just, for my book, there's just one serious section of cobblestones left, and that's this section of M. Now, this is a brave ride by a man who could sit in the back and wait for the sprint. John Degenkolb used his teammate for a little bit of time there, and then all of a sudden said, look, my teammate hasn't got the power left. I'm going for the win here this afternoon. The winner of the first monument of the year, Milan-San Remo, with a very, very good sprint.
It's a very brave move too, coming at 8.5 kilometres to go by John Degenkolb. So he now tries to reach the two leaders, and that'll confuse Lampert if he gets up, because he will work with Greg van Avermaet, and they'll take it to the sprint. They can both sprint when it matters.
This is the moment when everybody starts to look at each other. The two leaders, Tête de la Course, the head of the race. This is the penultimate section of cobblestones. It's a two-star, 1.4 kilometre long, the section from Willem to M.
And the ultimate section is just a short few hundred yards. No real worry at all as they come into the stadium. But this is a great move now by the winner of Milan-San Remo, as John Degenkolb is throwing all his cards out the window now. He wants to reach these two leaders. He will work, and it looks as though Van Avermaet is beginning to hurt Lampert, or is he?
Well, he doesn't want to wait till the final sprinter. These are nasty corners there. I remember Henny Kuiper, I think 1983, was going around one of these corners, and his tyre popped off when he was only about 20 seconds in front. He managed to get a wheel change, and he managed to go on to the victory. So you've got to be very careful negotiating corners like this. Look at the damage now. This is the 245 kilometres of pain that's starting to really decide this race this afternoon. Peter Sagan has been aggressive. He's still in there with a chance, but his pedalling style there does not look very comfortable at all. I don't think it's yet the great Peter Sagan that we've seen of the last couple of seasons.
No, his body language is not good there, but he's still hanging on in. And once you're in the velodrome, times change. Lampert has managed to tame that move by Greg van Avermaet. Avermaet on a mission now to finally get the result he's always threatened to do. John Degenkolb, second last year, out to spoil the party.
They dare not let this man catch up, because if the three of those riders go onto the stadium together, this man will win. He is the fastest man on the block at the moment. He is very, very rapid indeed. Alexander Christoph, the winner of the Tour of Flanders, he seems to be in a little bit of difficulty a bit further back, but Van Avermaet, he has to do everything. There is one nasty little climb though before they get to the velodrome, and that's the climb out of the small town of M. But you know what? This man here, John Degenkolb, is doing a stormer of a ride. He's just about to make contact with the leading two. That's going to make three men.
Well, he's going to get on around about 6 kilometres to go by the look of it. A determination on his face as he tries to join the winner of the Tour of West Flanders this year, Yves Lampert, and also Greg van Avermaet. Three strong men on good form for the time of the year.
Well, I tell you what, when Van Avermaet looks over his shoulder now, they're just about to turn left and come off this cobblestone section. When he looks around and sees that John Degenkolb, is going to say, oh no, my luck is not in again today. That's it, they're off the section of cobblestone. There's only one ceremonial section of cobblestones left, and that's just outside the stadium here. And all of what's going on, oh, he's trying to take a drink on board from one of his followers there, one of his supporters, probably from just over the borders in Belgium. And now Lars Boom is at 25 seconds. It's going to be an all-out chase now down towards the finish.
He has realised the seriousness of that move now. These four riders have got to sort it out quickly.
Well, Stuybar is in third position there, and he's not going to work at all because he's got a man in that leading group of three, and a gap at 5.5 kilometres, just over 3 miles of racing left to go to the finish. Is about half a minute. Now, will they work and collaborate with John Degenkolb? They know how fast this guy is.
Well, there's the drink, and Degenkolb wants more action. He'll get nothing out of Yves Lampert. He's not going to help him at all as they continue. He's not going to damage the fact that Nicky Terpstra is just behind him here, and he's saying, I can't help you boys, well, it's up to you guys.
Stuybar as well is in that group up. There is Zdeněk Stuybar, and he will do everything he can to pull up. So all of a sudden you've got a very good tactical situation for Etixx Quickstep at the front of this race.
And let's not forget the champion of Switzerland who slipped into this move, who's finding very, very good form at the moment, Martin Elmiger. Jens Kukeler is the rider from Orica Green Edge. Still sat at the back here is Peter Sagan. He's tired. I think he's out of this now. We all love Roubaix, especially when it's the last 5 kilometres of the race for those who've done all the work of the day. As always, there's a huge crowd waiting to welcome the riders for the 113th time.
But the question is, which ride is it going to be? John Degenkolb has got to take the responsibility now. He knows he's the fastest guy in this group. He is getting some assistance coming from Greg van Avermaet in the red and black jersey of Team BMC, but the man who will sit on the back right the way down to the finish is the Belgian rider Yves Lampert, because he knows behind him. Look at the gap now, it's just 11 seconds. Zdeněk Stybar is in that group behind, and a lot of riders, most of the Belgian riders, said Stybar is the man that we feel can win this today, but could he beat John Degenkolb on this velodrome? I don't think so.
5 kilometres to go,
Sagan's had a
and
puncture.
Sagan's had a change of bicycles here. That's the best he could do at 5 kilometres out. This is how it happened. Car was right on the spot there.
Talk about quick, this is how you do it. Get rid of the bike, wait for the mechanic to come on board. The mechanic got the bike off very, very quickly. With a bit of luck, Peter Sagan might just get himself back into that group for the finish line. But this is where the race is on. Inside of 5 kilometres, John Degenkolb looking very strong. He's got assistance coming every now and again from Greg van Avermaet at its quick step. Because of the strength in numbers, this man number 3 will not collaborate.
No, and he knows that behind, 10 seconds back, is Stybar riding with Jens de Kukkeler of Orica Green Edge, doing the ride of his life, I might add. And also back there, Martin Elmiger, who's making the pace here at the moment, and Lars Bohm. They're the 4 riders who are chasing. Elmiger's having a new lease of life in these one-day classics, an amazing guy.
Yeah, certainly the Swiss national champion. He's quite happy to collaborate in a group like this. These guys now are down to 10 seconds. This is the slight drag away from the town of M. They can see the 3 leaders in front of them. You know, we may well...
Stybar's going. He's
gone.
trying to reach him on his own. Lars Bohm couldn't make it. He saw him go, but he's just come off the front. De Kukkeler's trying, but he hasn't got it. Stybar's crossing by himself. Well, now there's trouble.
Well, just going back for there, there's Lars Bohm, number 81. He's decided, right, nobody's got any power left in this group anymore. I'm off as well now, because this is the moment. It's critical to try and make the junction before they go over the top of this false flat. John Degenkolb, he's put his cards on the table. This man could have sat back and waited for the sprint, but now all of a sudden Peter Sagan riding himself into that group. He didn't have all of the luck on his side here this afternoon. He'd be just about to make it. It makes his junction with the 3rd group on the road. The 3 leaders, but very shortly, Phil, I'm sure if we pull back, we're going to see Zdeněk Stybar.
It's a big effort by the former cycling world champion at cyclocross as he tries to reach them now. He's suited to Paris-Roubaix. He's had a high finish before in this event, but he's never been on the podium. That's maybe about to change. And this is why Lampert has done no working in this breakaway, because he wants that man down there to join him at the front.
Wow, look at the speed. Now there you can see Lars Bohm has been picked up by the other 2 in the group with him. Martin Elmiger, Kukkeler is number 106 for Orica Green Edge. Stybar is a class actor. This guy, I think it's going to be a big showdown once he gets to the velodrome here, because he will be thinking about what he could have done a couple of years ago when he was in a position to win Paris-Roubaix. But can he beat John Degenkolb? Phil, Degenkolb is so quick, but has he left too much energy out on the road with that move?
3.3 kilometres to go. One thing's for sure now, no fairy tale repeat for Nicky Terpstra here in Paris-Roubaix, and no fairy tale goodbye to Team Sky for Sir Bradley Wiggins, also out of the hunt now. The win will come from these guys.
But will it be at its quick step as it was 12 months ago, because they have got the chance of being superior in numbers once again. Bradley Wiggins is making a little bit of move there from the group. He realises Paris-Roubaix, his last major race on the road as a professional cyclist, is almost over. He's going to get every last little bit of energy out, and he's opening up the gap. Look at that.
Well, that's a big effort by Sir Bradley, and the great champion he is too. Everybody said if he were to win today, he'd be one of the greatest cyclists of all time. On the road, time trial, and on the track. A multi-Olympic and world champion.
Look at this move. This is the move that he made as we started to come in towards him.
That's a tremendous effort by Bradley. Everybody scrabbling for a place on the podium at Paris-Roubaix, where, by the way, they're putting the bikes on the podium as well today to pay tribute to the machinery that's got them over these cobblestones.
It's all
coming together.
It's all coming back together.
At 2K.
We're not far away from that final ceremonial section of cobblestones. Now, all of a sudden, you've got Lampard looks over his shoulder. He's got to keep this nice and high. He's got to make sure those 3 other riders don't come back. He will sacrifice himself now. That's the advantage of having a teammate in at the kill in a race like this. John Degenkolb will be doing everything he can to try and recover from that massive effort that he made. Sitting there, Greg van Avermaet is trying to figure out, how am I going to beat these other guys to the line to get the big victory that we need?
Well, Elmiger, and then the lighter coloured jersey there of Lars Bohm, and de Kukkeler of Orica coming up towards this group. This is going to be one finish on the velodrome, and this velodrome's seen some great finishes in its time. Lamport, Stuyber, Degenkolb, Van Avermaet, they're the men to catch, and they're only 1.5 kilometres from the finish.
Well, this is the final section of cobblestones. They're a very nice section of cobblestones named after Gruppeland, a former winner of Paris-Roubaix. There is the Flamme Rouge. They'll swing to the right and they will come into the loud crowd. It's all back together.
It's all together.
Boom
Outside
is
a kilometre to go.
Well, there we go. It's back now to a 7-man leading group. They're swinging right. One more right-hand turn and they'll be onto the velodrome. They will do 1.5 laps at the velodrome. It's going to be very, very critical now. Going to be a difficult one to call. I'd have to say that John Degenkolb must be the #1 favourite. He's a fast sprinter. He'll be looking for this.
Here they come into the stadium. The crowd roar them onto the track. It's a long time since we've seen a 7-man sprint at Roubaix Velodrome. Not surprisingly, Lampert brings them through to the bell. The sacrificial lamb, is he setting it up for Stuyber?
Well, Degenkolb there, Phil, in a good position. He's in third. On his wheel is Greg van Avermaet. Lars Boom is in 5th position. It's all a question of biding your time. It's very difficult here to come around a rider in the last corner. They've got 250 metres to go.
And look at Martin Elmöger trying to nudge it on the left of our picture, but now it's going to be a battle between Stuyber, Avermaet and Degenkolb. Stuyber's got the front as he swings around the back of the track there. Don't take any notice of the riders you'll see in front of them. They're being lapped. The attack comes from Degenkolb now. Stuyber digs deep. Is Degenkolb going one better than a year ago? From second to first in a great move. He wins it. Degenkolb gets the victory. Stuyber will take second. Van Avermaet crosses the line in third. An incredibly quick speed of 43.48. Not a record, but pretty close to.
Well, that was an impressive sprint and a impressive final 10 kilometres. There's a big acceleration coming over on the far side. Deboucher has managed to get himself away.
So as the riders come over the line, Luke Rowe, I think it is, has just come in there, which is a pretty good ride for Team Sky by Luke Rowe.
Yeah, so Bradley Wiggins comfortably in the back end of that group. What an incredible finale, but hats off to John Degenkolb, the man who is renowned as a sprinter, could have sat in that group and waited for it all to unfold in front of him, but he took the responsibility. He made the move when he had to make the move. He jumped across to the leading group of 2, and even when it came down towards the finish, he still had the power to finish it off.
His 39th career win. This is how it happened. He came off the front there. He was so determined. Went very early. Stuyber clearly isn't a great track sprinter. Van Avermaet tried to take him on. Degenkolb just put the turbo in and pulled away all the way to the line. Our cameras didn't flash back to show the second place, but I'll go for Stuyber. Happiest great moments, and a good result too for Giant Alpecin. There's the confirmation of Stuyber in second, Van Avermaet, Bohm, Elmöger, Jens Kukeler, and then Lampert in 7th place. Luke Rowe brought home the rest though at 28 seconds. That's an incredibly good ride for Luke Rowe, Team Sky.
This is topping everything, and this is, yeah, the race what I've ever always dreamed of to win, and to.
Et là, John Degenkolb qui est félicité encore par un de ses coéquipiers. Oui, John nous disait sans Remo, c'était déjà énorme au niveau
Yes, well, I think we all know how John Degenkolb feels. This is the one he wanted.
Unbelievable. I really can't get it right now, and I had to work very hard for it, and my team was the whole day there to hold the situation under control till I could start, and we knew that it's going to be hard. That a big group goes to the finish, and I was then in a situation that I had to go. Otherwise, the same situation from last year would have happened, and I had to invest something, and I was not afraid to fail, and that was the key.
Oui, alors John nous dit qu'il a travaillé très dur pour ça, que son équipe a été formidable aujourd'hui, qu'ils ont fait un grand travail. Ils étaient dans un petit groupe à la fin et il savait qu'il devait faire ça parce que sinon il aurait terminé deuxième comme l'an dernier. Et évidemment, il ne voulait pas ça. Yes, because John, the other guys didn't want to collaborate with you because they knew you were faster. Ils ne voulaient pas rouler avec vous parce qu'ils savaient que vous seriez plus rapide au sprint.
Yeah, the situation was, of course, I mean, when you are probably the fastest guy, then nobody wants to pull with you and want to work with you and bring you to the finish line. And so, yeah, I decided to go by myself, and I think that was the right decision and the right moment. It was really, really hard, but I'm just so happy and proud. Super.
Oui, quand vous êtes, c'est ça le problème, quand vous êtes le coureur le plus rapide au sprint, eh bien on ne veut pas travailler avec vous, mais moi j'ai fait ce qu'il fallait et c'est juste extraordinaire.
Well, tonight, when John Degenkolb finally realised he has won Paris-Roubaix, that is going to go down in history big time, because no German has won Paris-Roubaix since 1896, the very first Paris-Roubaix itself.
Votre idole, Sean Kelly, de remporter Milan-San Remo et Paris-Roubaix, là vous l'avez fait.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable, and yeah, I think it's a long time ago, this combination San Remo and Roubaix, and I'm so happy and proud, and this victory is really an achievement from the whole team, and it's amazing.
Oui, c'est incroyable ce que j'ai fait, ça fait très très longtemps que ça n'a pas été fait, comme vous le disiez avec Sean Kelly, c'était mon idole. Je suis juste très très fier d'avoir réalisé ça. Thanks a lot and congrats. Bravo.
Looking down on the Velo Club Roubaix, which looks after this track here. They have a supporters club here in the centre. And this is their big day out. Now, let's have a look here at the World Tour standings. Richie Porte, the Australian on Team Sky, keeps his lead in the World Tour. John Degenkolb, though, is now up into third place. Christoph, the dominator this year in the 1 days, he's in second place. Geraint Thomas in fourth. And Steibar comes in again at sixth now, as the World Tour continues, of course, right through to the end of the year.